Thank you all for joining us today for the Imagine 2021 day session with our very own alumna, Nina House. This will be one of the many day sessions offered to students this week during the Imagine 2021 program, sponsored by the President's Office, Career Services, and the Oswego Alumni Association. So to start off, I'll introduce myself. My name is Jessica Burnett, and I am a junior studying public relations and minoring in business administration. On campus, some of the things I'm involved in are Dulce Art Dance Club, where I choreograph dances, and I'm also a dancer at the end of the semester recitals as well. Other than dance, I'm also an intern for FANS, which is the Future Alumni Network, and I work as a public relations intern. I also am part of PRSSA, which is the Public Relations Student Society of America. As for when I graduate college, my dream job would be to do some type of public relations work for Disney World because I'm a huge Disney fanatic. But before I do that, I want to definitely work for a PR agency in the city. Those are definitely two of my top jobs for the future. One of the upcoming Imagine 2021 sessions that I feel would benefit me the most is actually one that takes place tomorrow at 4 p.m. It's called Search Smarter, Not Harder for Positions. This sounds like it would be a nice panel event to hear how easily it is to get a job position in your intended field after college. And this also really benefits me because I'm going to be a senior in the fall, so I'm getting pretty close to graduation. For the sessions held today kicks off week 4 of the Imagine 2021 program, which is a 5-week program focused on giving students and the class of 2020 the chance to explore career paths, find job and internship opportunities, network with alumni, and many more. Feel free to check out the website for more details. The link is actually located in the chat. And if you complete 3 items on the weekly checklist, you'll be eligible for a drawing at the end of the week. The direct link to the checklist is also located in the chat. And now I am so excited to tell you about today's speaker, Nina House. Nina House is currently a botany master's student at the California Botanic Garden in Claremont, California. For her thesis, she is conducting floristic inventory of the Mantor and Salmon Creek watersheds in southern Sierra Nevada, Tulare County, California. Nina graduated from SUNY Oswego in 2017 with a bachelor's degree in biology and a minor in sustainability studies. As an undergrad, she participated in the Go Green Team, Ecology Club, and Astronomy Club, as well as conducted microplastic research with Aaron Hellquist and Scott McKinnon. If you have any questions throughout her presentation, place them in the chat and we will get to them at the end of the presentation. And with that being said, please join me in welcoming Nina House.
My name is Nina House, and I'm a botany master's student at the California Botanic Garden in Claremont, California. So I grew up in a small town called Phoenix, New York, which is about a half an hour south of SUNY Oswego. And I graduated from Phoenix High School in 2012 and then went to Onondaga Community College for 2 years, where I got my associate's degree in liberal arts and sciences. When it came time to transfer from OCC and decide what I wanted to do next, I really had no clue. I had a lot of ideas. I like X-ray technician and finance and psychology. But I knew what I really wanted to do was be in the environmental field and be a biology major at Oswego. But I was sort of like really nervous to do this. I wasn't sure if I would be able to handle a career in the sciences. But thankfully, I had a lot of people in my life who pushed me to do what I wanted to do. And I ended up registering as a biology major when I transferred to Oswego. And I have never regretted it. I had a great time doing the biology major at Oswego and doing the career that I'm doing now. So in 2017, I graduated from Oswego, and then I, about a month later, moved to Los Angeles, California, where I've been living ever since. I worked for 2 years before I started in the graduate program at the California Botanic Garden as a botany master's student. So sort of just what I want to talk to you guys about today is my time at Oswego, how it influenced my career choices, the work that I did between undergrad and graduate school, what I'm doing in graduate school now, and then I've got some resources for you because botany is a really cool field to be in. I really recommend it, and I hope that by the end of this you will be convinced. Yeah, so while I was at Oswego, I had 3 major goals beyond doing well in my classes, and these included doing research, doing an internship, and doing a study abroad. And happily, I was able to do all 3 of those things. So I'm just going to run through them now. The biggest thing that I got to do while I was at Oswego, and I think the thing that has really impacted my career the most, was microplastic ingestion research with Dr. Halquist and my friend Scott Minikheim. So I took intro ecology with Dr. Halquist my 4th year of college, because I did 5 years in total. And during intro ecology, I remember I was really inspired by Dr. Halquist and like his enthusiasm and how excited he was about his work and teaching and everything. So I was encouraged to approach him about doing research. And I still have these emails where we were going back and forth, where he sent me information about the microplastic research he had been doing with previous students. And then I remember sitting there and being like, okay, I need to come up with a good question about all of this and like show that I can be a good researcher. And he, I'm very happy to say, like, allowed me to do the research with him. And then I corralled my friend Scott, and we ended up doing this microplastic ingestion research. So what exactly was this? We did a collaboration with the United States Geological Survey, which has a station in Oswego, New York. And our main goal was to see if forage fish in Lake Ontario were ingesting microplastics. So the USGS does an annual trawl every year in the lake where they collect fish, and we asked them to collect fish for us as well. So of the 330 fish that we sampled from the lake, Scott and I only found 9 fish that did not contain some sort of microplastic pollution. And this is like really important information. It affects our knowledge of microplastics getting incorporated into trophic food webs. So it's like if the fish are eating it and things are eating the fish, they're likely getting microplastics in them as well. And additionally, it's just showing like the ubiquity of microplastics in our aquatic environments. They're there, they're being eaten, we're probably eating them too. Yeah, so, but beyond just understanding that how microplastics were affecting these fish and our environment, this research also really helped me in a lot of ways. It gave me experience presenting a poster presenting at an international conference, presenting at Quest. I got experience writing grant proposals, writing a manuscript, working with professors, working with colleagues, working with government officials. This was by far one of the most important things that I did during my undergraduate career, and really impacted me, the most, for sure. So I highly recommend doing research. And it also directly led to the completion of my second goal, which was to do an internship during undergrad. So because we were working with the United States Geological Survey, we were able to get an internship at the station in Oswego. Basically, during our time with the USGS, we did dietary studies of Lake Ontario prey fish. So instead of looking for microplastics during these studies, we were just looking at the contents of the fish stomachs to see what else they had been eating, basically, like little bugs and things, right? So that there's just more looking at fish stomachs, but it was a lot of fun and it was very cool. We also got to help with the annual trawl, where they collect the fish from the lake. I say help maybe a little loosely because I was kind of seasick the whole time, so I don't know how useful I really was. But that is, that helped me learn, like, maybe I don't want to work on a boat my whole life, which is a great thing to learn during an internship in undergrad, and not after I've been pursuing that as a career for like however many years. So that's one of the really great things about internships, is they help you learn what you like and dislike in a job, which is a great thing to understand early on. It also, yes, gave me more experience working with government workers and professionals. And while I ended up moving to California and away from this branch of the USGS, Scott stayed in New York and ended up getting a job with them. And he still works with them today. He actually ended up completely changing his career path after doing this work. So internships are super important to just like getting you the experience you need that could potentially get you a job. So I really encourage you to do an internship if you can during undergrad. I also got to do a second internship during my undergraduate career, and this was with the Friends of Recreation, Conservation, and Environmental Stewardship, FORCES for short, which is, it's a program of the New York Park Service. And basically, so I was in ecology club at Oswego, and during one of the meetings, Patricia Schulenberg did a presentation. I don't even remember what she was presenting on anymore, but she worked for FORCES as the program specialist. And I remember after her presentation being like, I need to talk to this woman. Because I was like, maybe I can volunteer with them and that'll lead to an internship, or maybe that'll lead to a job. So after that ecology club meeting, I walked up to her and I asked her like, hey, can I volunteer with you guys? And we ended up meeting and setting up a invasive species removal training for the ecology club. And then after I like proved that I was like interested enough by setting up this meeting, I got an internship with them. And this internship focused on the conservation of the piping plover, which had been gone from the shores of Lake Ontario for about 30 years or so, and had just recently returned in like the year or two prior to when I did this internship. And essentially I just hung out on the beach for hours with this cute bird. And I got to talk to beachgoers about shorebirds and how this species was specifically endangered, and to kind of yelled at them to keep their dogs away from him. And yeah, it was great. I had a lot of fun with this internship. And again, yeah, just gave me more experience. Even if that's not the direction I ended up heading in, it was a good experience. And then finally, that same summer that I did the piping plover internship, I also got to complete my third goal, which was to do a study abroad in this case in Costa Rica. So for those of you who are interested in field biology, you may have noticed that there are just not a lot of study abroad programs for field biology related work. And actually this program just popped, I think was an ad online one day. And I was looking at their website, and they've got programs all around the world. The reason I was encouraged to do the Costa Rica one was because I had a minor in sustainability studies. So this sustainability word kind of caught my attention. But the School for Field Studies is very focused on, giving students field experience. And this program in Costa Rica specifically is because Costa Rica's economy relies a lot on ecotourism. They need to make sure that their environment is being kept healthy. Otherwise, they're not going to do too well. So they've got a lot of very good techniques towards sustainability that I learned a lot about while I was there, and I kind of try to incorporate in my daily life and in my career. But beyond what I learned there, I went to Costa Rica. Like, this program was not affiliated with Oswego. I had to work with the study abroad office at Oswego to make sure that I could get credit for it, make sure that I was going to be safe, and get the plane ticket all set up. And because of all of this too, I didn't know anybody prior to going to Costa Rica. I got on this plane for the first time like I had been to Canada, but I hadn't been outside of North America before, and definitely not by myself. So I was pretty nervous, but I made some really great friends, like some of which I'm still in contact with to this day. And it, I think, really helped me believe in myself a little bit more, that I'm capable of going to new places and surviving and prospering even. So I think, yeah, studying abroad is a really great way to learn about different cultures and just, yeah, meet new people and maybe like believe in yourself a bit more. So one thing you may have noticed between all of these things is I sought them out. These were not opportunities that were just handed to me. I had to go looking for them and even like pester people a little bit to make sure that I was able to do them. And kind of my ongoing joke with Dr. Helkus for a while was that I annoyed him until he until he let me do research with him. But that's not true. Professors and later on bosses, managers, what have you, love enthusiasm. They want to work with people who care. And if you're showing persistence and showing initiative, they like that and they want to work with people like that. So don't feel like you're being annoying if you have to send a couple reminder emails to be like, hey, can you tell me a little bit more about your research? It's not annoying. It's great, and people love to see that. So I recognize that there's a little bit of privilege involved in being able to do a study abroad and having the time to do an unpaid internship. And not everybody can do that during their undergraduate careers. So I kind of made a list of some of my favorite classes that I took at Oswego, because if nothing else, you're there to learn and take classes. So I hope you have time to take some of these. I'm not going to run through the whole list, but some of the highlights, some of my absolute favorites. GIS, I still use GIS today. There's maps in this presentation that I used making GIS. Plant Kingdom and Plants and Society, I'm a botanist. So these are definitely two of the best classes, some of the most helpful classes that I took. Great Lakes environmental issues and limnology. If I hadn't headed in a plant direction, probably if I hadn't moved to California, I would have ended up doing more freshwater ecology type work. So I loved those classes. And even though I didn't end up heading in that direction, it doesn't hurt me to have knowledge on those things. So yeah, I loved these classes. They were definitely my favorites, and I can vouch for them, and I can vouch for the professors that taught them. Classes I didn't get to take, but I wanted to. Plant systematics I've gotten to take in graduate school, but some of these others I really wish I had more time. I wish I had infinite time to do these things. And then another thing too, I was pretty heavily involved in extracurriculars while I was in undergrad. I mentioned already that I was in ecology club, but I was also in Go Green Team and astronomy club, and I was the secretary of math club. Clubs are really a great way to interact with professors outside of classes, learn about opportunities in your field, and just get to have like a little extra fun doing what you love to do. It's also a great way to meet like-minded people your own age. And I think it's important here to mention that networking is not this scary thing that it's often made out to be. Like, I remember the word networking, I was like terrified of that. I was like, oh my God, I have to go meet random older people and like try to make them get me a job or something. Like, ugh. But you are networking literally every time you interact with a classmate, you go to a club and start talking about similar interests. Like, you never know where those interactions are going to lead. Like, maybe like they'll be able to help you with a homework question that you don't understand, or maybe they'll be able to get you a job someday, or maybe they can just be your friend, you know. Like, networking is really, just think of it as making friends. And do extracurriculars, because they're a lot of fun. And then finally, last thing about Oswego that I'll talk about, take advantage of every opportunity that's feasible to take advantage of. during my last year at Oswego, Dr. Helquist asked me if I would go speak to a woman who was applying to be a professor at the time, and this is Dr. Guo. And I remember being like, okay, sure, like I'll do that. I'll make time for that, you know. And this conversation was probably like one of the singular most important conversations that I've had in my life, really. During this conversation, I told Dr. Guo that I was going to be moving to California later that year, and that I was interested in plants and pursuing plant work. And she told me that she had just recently graduated with her PhD from the California Botanic Garden. And she offered to put me in contact with people there if I was interested. And after like 3 months of living in California, I reached out to her and was like, hey, actually, could you put me in contact with somebody? I'm interested in this program. And this is a super small program, so I probably wouldn't have even found it if she hadn't told me about it. But she put me in contact with my now advisor, Naomi Fraga. And, you know, that's all she wrote, right? Yeah, so just even if you're like feeling a little tired one day, you never know what opportunities you're missing out on if you don't go. And that's another reason why, like, yeah, going to clubs and networking with people of all ages is just like a really important thing to do. Yeah, and Dr. Go is awesome. So if you have the opportunity to take a class with her, I recommend. Okay, so transitioning towards plants a little bit more, I realize this is maybe a little bit of a 180 from like the work that I had been doing during undergrad. And I want to mention here that sometimes you sort of just fall into things. I was already super excited about plants during undergrad, but I was also pursuing wetland ecology things as well when I moved out here. I applied for a lot of different jobs. And, you know, but I got a plant internship first, and then I got a plant job, and then I got into plant grad school, you know, so none of that happened for wetland ecology, which could partially be because I'm in Southern California, but and I'm extremely happy doing what I'm doing, but there was some amount of serendipity involved in it. That being said, why was I interested in plants to begin with? Plants are stinking cool for a lot of reasons. First of all, they're the basis of all terrestrial ecosystems. So while fuzzy, cute mammals might be getting all of the conservation funding, they're out of luck if you don't take care of the plants that either they rely on or their food relies on. So protecting plants is really like very, very important for all other life on Earth. They're also ubiquitous. You can go to the lowest point in the continental United States, Death Valley, and you can find plants, and you can go to the highest point in the continental United States, Mount Whitney, and you can find plants. They're everywhere, which means you can go anywhere and you can study them. There's always going to be work to do with plants. They're also immensely diverse. So the plants in Death Valley and the plants on Mount Whitney are very, very different. And the plants in my yard are super different from the plants in your yard in New York State. They're all plants, but they're all doing the same things, but they're finding different ways to do the same things. And that's really cool to look at and learn about. They also stay still. It's not like monkeys in the jungle that you have to chase for hours. Like, I can just take a picture of a plant and it's not going anywhere when I try to do it. But they still turn up in super cool places. So for example, the plant in this photo here, Pinewoods fritillari, I was just walking into a meadow, not like at the end of the day, not really expecting to find anything. And I stumbled across this plant, which is actually a rare plant. I wasn't expecting to find it there. And there's plenty of other plants that just you expect them to be in like this one mountain range, but then they appear in another mountain range like 20 miles to the east, and it's like, how did this even get here? So they're really, really cool. Additionally, why I maybe chose them over animals too is killing them isn't so gnarly. So, or like working with them, like isn't, there's no blood and guts involved. You just take it out of the ground and it doesn't feel so bad. And then finally, I really wanted to be able to do field work. I didn't want to sit in front of a computer 24 hours a day. I wanted to be able to get outside, and plants definitely allow you to be able to do that. They're also super cute, but that's an aside. Yeah, so I moved to California and I really started my journey in learning about plants. Enter job hunting. I spent a few months, I worked at a grocery store for a few months when I first worked out here, or when I first moved out here. And I was feeling pretty downtrodden for like those few months. I applied to so many jobs and I either didn't hear back from any of them or I heard a no. And yeah, it was pretty depressing. I was like, why did I get a bachelor's degree if I'm not going to get any work? What was the point of that? But then finally, I heard back from the Palos Verdes Peninsula Land Conservancy, and they were offered me an unpaid restoration intern position with them. I had to drive 2 hours one way in Los Angeles traffic just to get to this internship because I was up near Pasadena and they're over by the coast. But it was I thought it was completely worth it. It gave me my first thorough introduction to botany, California native plants, and to the conservation field. And it also gave me the opportunity to network. 6 months after moving here, I went to my first conference and I knew people. I was like saying hello to people there. And I remember just feeling like really, really proud of myself in that moment because I was like, I've only been here. I moved to California not knowing anybody. And I'm at this conference right now, like saying hello to people. And that feels really awesome. That feels really good. And I definitely have this internship to thank for that. I also have this internship to thank, I think, for giving me the experience I needed for a paid job at the California Botanic Garden. So in February 2018, I started working as a seed conservation intern and then was later promoted to technician at the California Botanic Garden. So seed conservation is something that is often overlooked or not thought of because when people think of plants, well, first of all, plants are overlooked. But when you think of plants, you think of plants. You don't think of the seeds that they produce, but you can't protect the plant if you don't protect the seeds. So the California Botanic Garden is the largest botanical garden in the world dedicated to California native plants. And it also houses the largest seed bank dedicated to California native plants. So a seed bank is basically a facility that holds many freezers. And in those freezers are packets full of seeds. And the reason that this is done is because once you put seeds into freezer storage, they go dormant. It stops them from germinating, from going bad, or at least prevents them from going bad for a longer period of time. And then once taken out of the freezer, these seeds can be used in restoration projects. They can be used for research projects. And they also provide a safety blanket against extinction in the wild. So if you have a rare species that's only present in one population, if that population were to get wiped out because of some freak accident, we have the seeds in the freezer, so then we can reintroduce those plants to the wild. Part of this job also includes germination tests. So yeah, if that plant were to go extinct in the wild, we want to know how to germinate it so that we can reintroduce it. So yeah, and seeds from wild native plants don't always germinate as easily as those that come from like Lowe's or Home Depot or something like this. They can often be really hard to germinate. So we do these germination tests to figure out what these plants need to germinate, so we know how to grow them up later if necessary. Things that sometimes seeds need to germinate can be burn treatments. They can be periods of cold before, like colder temperatures before heat. They sometimes need to be, the seed coat needs to be scarified. So you can see in this photo us actually burning seeds here. And we would often grow up the seeds on agar plates so that we could count them as they were germinating. This job really introduced me to a whole new world of plant science. I was one of those people who hadn't really thought about seeds prior to this job, but it's actually a very big part of any native plant organization. So you can, if you might be able to get a job similar to this in New York. Actually, I'm very confident that you can. Yeah, so part of this job was working in the seed house and doing all of these things that I just outlined, but part of this job was also doing field work. So those seeds had to come from somewhere, right? I spent a lot of time driving around the Mojave Desert and the southern Sierra Nevada, scouting for large enough plant populations that would produce very big seed collections. And just having a really good time. But I mean, this job made me so much more confident about doing field work. But besides what I had done in Costa Rica, I really hadn't done that much field work at all. I had never set up a tent by myself before. I was not comfortable in backcountry wilderness. And I really wasn't very good at plant identification. But after my first trip out in the field with this job, I had put up a tent by myself in the dark. I had camped in temperatures below freezing. I was doing plant identification in the field and learning so much about California native plants. And yeah, just and having a lot of fun. So this job really confirmed my love for plants and my love for field work. And yeah, it was just totally awesome. And I took all these photos. Yeah, it was just a lot of fun. Besides getting to do all of the seed related stuff, I also got to do some field work that was unrelated to seed bulking. So I got to do rare and invasive plant surveys, which is something that is often really an important part of any like botanical work that you do it like in a career setting. And I also got to do plant inventories of springs in the Mojave Desert, which my advisor just published the paper on that. So if you're interested in that work, I can send that to you. Yeah, so I got a whole lot of experience from this job, and it was, yeah, one of the most important things that I've done in my adult life. And I'm forever grateful for them giving me the opportunity to work there. Besides of all the work experience, it also gave me the experience I needed to get into the grad program at California Botanic Garden. So the graduate program at the California Botanic Garden is pretty unique. First of all, it's very small. Right now, it's even smaller than normal because of COVID. We didn't accept any new students this past year, and then we also had a student graduate. So we're only 8 right now. But in a normal year, it's like 10 to 12 students, which is still very small for any academic organization. Secondly, it's unique because it's housed at a botanic garden. You probably know that, yeah, most graduate programs are housed at universities, but the California Botanic Garden is in association with the Claremont Graduate University. They give us the degree, and we do all of our classes and our research at the Botanic Garden. And being in a botanic garden is really helpful for a lot of reasons, because we have these plants in this living collection right outside the door. So if we need to do research on a plant, we can go get what we need from that plant. and not have to drive 3 hours to the nearest population. And also it's nice to just be able to get up from your computer every now and then and go for a walk. So my program specifically emphasizes systematics and the evolution of higher plants. Basically, systematics is how plant species are related and then classifying them into different families, genera, species, etc., based on those relationships. PhD students tend to work in this systematics realm at the garden, while master's students can do that or do floristic work. I am doing a floristic study for my master's thesis. For those of you who know Dr. Hellquist, he also did one for his master's work. So if you are interested in talking to somebody there who knows about this sort of work, you can talk to him. But floristics involve the thorough documentation of the plant life in a particular region. So basically, it's a whole lot of hiking and field work and walking around an area looking for different plants. And the products of this type of work are voucher specimens and annotated checklists. So a voucher specimen is basically a piece of a plant. If it's a large perennial, like a tree or a shrub or something like this, you just like clip off a piece of it. Or if it's an annual, you can like take the whole thing out of the ground. And then similar to what you might have done with flowers or leaves or something, where you press it between the pages of a book. With voucher specimens, you can see it here happening in this photo. You take it and put it between two pieces of newspaper and then cardboard, and you press the plant flat. And you try to do this for every single plant that's present in this given area that you've chosen. And then from all of these plants that you've collected, you create an annotated checklist, which basically just lists every single plant that's found in that area. So this is an example of a voucher specimen once it's brought back to a herbarium. Once you bring it back to the herbarium and it's been pressed flat, it gets glued to a piece of herbarium paper where, and then you also include any data that was taken on the plant when you collected it, such as habitat type, how tall it was, what color were the flowers, all of that sort of stuff. And then herbarium specimen, so you might be wondering, like, why don't you just take a photo of it? Why do you need to like take this is a lot of work. But herbarium specimens are so important. They are the basis for literally almost every other type of botanical research. You can, first of all, if they're taken care of well enough, they can last hundreds of years. The New York Botanic Garden in New York City has herbarium specimens that from the Lewis and Clark expedition. Like they can last a very long time if they're taken care of well. And then they can be used for DNA extraction, for phylogenetic studies. They can be, the presence or absence of flowers can give us an understanding of phenological changes. If the plants are flowering earlier or later, which might be happening given climate change. They can also show where plants have been in space and time. So if somebody collected a plant at my study site in 1900 and then I collect it now, it's pretty likely that that plant was there during that whole 1,000-year gap, right? So it's not just showing that the plant was there right now, it's also can show whether plants have been there for extended periods of time. Herbarium specimens are awesome. So floristic work, you get the point, is super cool, very important. It's also super unique. So there's no real, like, compared to other research that's done, there's no specific hypotheses. Instead, it's made up of many small ones. So if I'm out on the landscape and I see the rocks over there, that are much different than the rock type that's east of me, I can probably assume that there's going to be different plants on that rock type compared to the other. So that's basically what you're doing when you're out in the environment. You're looking around and you're making small hypotheses. I think the plants are going to be different over there, so I'm going to go over there and look. yeah, this is just a very unique type of research to do, and a very fun one. So you might be wondering, like, what's even the point of doing floristic work anymore? Don't we know all of the plants that are out there? Why do we need to keep looking for more and keeping track of where they are? You couldn't be more wrong. So there are plenty of botanical black holes that remain in the world, but in the United States, especially the Western United States, a botanical black hole is basically where no previous plants have been collected ever. In California, this includes the desert, this really big agricultural Central Valley area, the Modoc Plateau, and then parts of the Sierra Nevada mountain range still have a lot of black holes. Filling in these black holes is vital to our understanding of plant diversity and species ranges, and it also gives us key insights into potential threats to rare plant populations and helps to inform conservation efforts. We cannot protect plants if we don't understand where they grow and what they need to grow, and then like what's threatening them. So doing this work really helps us understand plants and helps us get a better understanding of what they need. So I mentioned in that last slide that the Sierra Nevada mountains have a couple of botanical black holes. And it's really important to be filling these black holes in the Sierra Nevada because the Sierra Nevada mountains are super cool. You could do any type of work in these mountains and not even breach the surface. Like if you worked on it your whole entire life, it's a very big mountain range, and it's inspired a lot of people for hundreds, thousands of years. So part of the reason the Sierra Nevada is so cool is because it is a hotspot for endemism and plant diversity in California. So endemism basically means it only grows there. So it's only present in the Sierra Nevadas, but nowhere else in the world. And there's actually quite a few plants that only occur in the Sierra Nevada and nowhere else. One specific one is the giant sequoia, which you can see here with my goofy dad. And you probably know about the giant sequoia, and that's just one plant that you know of. There are so many other species that only occur in this mountain range. Also, the Sierra Nevada makes up only 1/5 of the total land area of California, but it contains over half of the plants present in the state. So if we understand the plants that are occurring there, it really contributes to our overall knowledge of plants in California and in the world. So knowing all of this, I decided to do my floristic work in the Sierras. You can see here where this red dot is where my study site is, in the southern Sierra Nevada. And then down here, this other red dot is where I'm currently living near Los Angeles. So here is a map of my study site where I'm doing my floristic work. It's located on the Sequoia National Forest, which is not Sequoia National Park, but it is close by. It's made up of 2 watersheds, which you can see here outlined in black. This half is the Mantor Creek watershed, and this half is the Salmon Creek watershed. Part of my study site, so there's a lot of reasons I chose this study site. One, it's super beautiful, but 2, there's a lot of different habitat types in this area. Down here is where it's lower elevation part of my study site, and it's made up of this like dry, shrubby sort of environment. It's called chaparral, which is a unique habitat type to California. But there's also this montane coniferous forest environment, montane meadows, and granitic outcrops. Besides the different habitat type, all of these different habitat types can produce like a lot of different types of plants. So that's why that's important. And one of the reasons that it drew me to the site, because I want plant diversity. And then part of my study site is also on the Domeline Wilderness. So wilderness areas have a bit more protection than national forests. in that, in one way, just that you can't drive motorized vehicles on them. There's no roads in this area, which makes it harder to make plant collections. And makes it a botanical black hole. And you can see a little bit of that here. All of these areas that don't have dots have never had plant collections. So these red dots are historical plant collections that were made by previous botanists that came into the area. And then all of these yellow dots are plant collections that I've made so far during my project this past summer. So this coming summer, which will be my last field season, I'm planning on getting into some of these areas that haven't had any previous plant collections. And I'm very, very excited about it. So it's really important to be filling in our understanding of the plants that are growing in the Southern Sierra Nevada, especially in the Domeland Wilderness, which is that botanical black hole, primarily because there's a lot of threats that face plant life in this region. One of the biggest ones that I'm focusing on during my graduate studies is cattle grazing. So I have two pretty big montane meadows in my study site that are experiencing heavy cattle grazing. And part of my project is just seeing, like documenting the impacts of this cattle grazing, whether it's good or bad, and then letting the Forest Service know what I think is going on here. Like, do I think that the grazing is too much for the plants to be handling? And in one of those meadows, it actually might be. So that's a great experience getting to interact with the Forest Service like that. And then additionally, some more threats, off-highway vehicular recreation. People don't like to drive on roads. They like to go off-roading, and that has negative impacts on plant life, as you can probably imagine. And then climate change is also having big impacts in California as a whole, but also in these montane environments. I mean, a lot of the impacts of climate change. There's higher temperatures are being recorded, increased drought. Everybody knows about California's drought. And then also, everybody also knows about our unprecedented wildfire season that just occurred this past year. And wildfires have been continuously increasing in frequency and intensity for the past very, very many years. And all of these things have impacts on plant life. They are going to change how the distribution of plant species, and doing floristic work is vital in documenting how these plants are being affected by climate change, by cattle grazing, all of these things. Just one example of like fire that's, already impacted the plants in my area. So the Sequoia Complex fire started on August 19th of 2020 by a lightning strike, and it very quickly spread to 169,000 acres. And while it didn't get to my study site, which is outlined down here in white, it got very close. So close that I had to cancel the rest of my field season because there's only one road into my study site. And the fire was only 15 miles away from that road. And I don't have cell phone service when I'm out there. So I could very easily get trapped in my study site and not realize it until it's too late. So I had to cut my field season short because of that. And I was pretty bummed about it. But this was happening all over the state. They ended up closing down the national forests for like over a month because of how bad the wildfires were. So fires are getting in the way of science. Is I guess what I'm trying to say here. So great. I've outlined everything I did in undergrad. I've outlined the work that I've done so far and what I'm doing currently, but that's all well and good, but what can you even do with a botany degree? Which is a question that I have legitimately gotten, but it's a good question. And I'm here to tell you there are so many things you can do with a botany degree. There are an overwhelming number of things that you can do. Some of the big things that you can do are related to consulting. So rare plant surveys, I mentioned I did in my job with the California Botanic Garden. But there's also wetland delineations, which don't require a degree in botany, but having that background is super important. Like they have to identify plants during wetland delineations. This is a very important skill set to have. And then, yeah, consulting in general. Consulting can be a little rough on people who are more conservation minded, but because like basically you're going out there and making sure that nothing is growing there so that people can bulldoze it and put up buildings and things. But we need conservation minded people in that field. Otherwise we get people who don't care about plants or animals or things like this, and who don't necessarily know what they're doing. So then things are being built in places that they maybe shouldn't be. You can, with a botany degree, you can also go into land management. So you can work for the Forest Service, you can work for the Bureau of Land Management. All of these are like government level organizations and also pay very well. You can also go into the nonprofit realm and do like more conservation focused things. You can work for botanic gardens. You can do research both at botanic gardens oftentimes and also as a professor at universities, which, yeah, you need to get a PhD. Well, you don't need to get a PhD for, but that's another thing you can do with a botany degree. You can get a PhD. And so what direction do I want to head in specifically? I am wanting to go into the nonprofit world. I, since undergrad, have sort of had it hammered home that being able to communicate your research is super important. And I kind of think that as a scientist, you have an obligation to effectively communicate your work and your results to policymakers and to the general public. If you don't care about your research enough to tell other people about it, nobody's gonna come looking to you for answers. Like if you're documenting things that need to be fixed, you need to go out there and you need to tell policymakers and you need to tell the general public so that change can happen. And that's sort of what I'm hoping to do. I want to continue to do field botany, but I also want to work in the public policy realm and in the science communication realm and protect the plants and make sure that they have a voice speaking for them. Yeah. So that's all great, but you're in New York. You maybe don't want to move across the country to California. And I'm here to tell you, like, you don't need to. There's a lot of work that needs to be done in New England. A quarter of native New England wildflower species have been lost in the last 150 years alone. This includes often charismatic species like native orchids and lilies, just to name some things that you know the names of. And they're often replaced by non-native species like purple loosestrife, which you've definitely seen before because it's everywhere in New York. There are several factors affecting wildflower populations, including urban development, increasing deer and invasive plants, pollution and climate change. And while New England was one of the first places in North America to be thoroughly explored by European settlers, change is happening and we need to keep up with it. This is why floristic work is so important. It can document those changes that are being caused by all of these things that I just listed, urban development, et cetera. But somebody needs to be out there doing it. So I implore you to do floristic work. And if you don't want to do floristic work and you just want to work with plants, there are so many ways to do that and still be working to protect them. So I kind of put together some quick resources for you guys. Graduate programs that have awesome like botanical plant science programs are Cornell, New York Botanic Garden, and the Environmental School of Forestry. These are amazing programs that are like nationally known. Like people talk about Cornell out here and I'm like, yeah, I live like 2 hours away from there. I'm like, what? And then out of state programs, if you're interested in moving out of state, there's the California Botanic Garden where I'm at, which is also very well known in the botanical community. There's the Chicago Botanic Garden, and there's the Fairchild Tropical Botanic Garden, just to name some other programs that have graduate programs at botanic gardens. And these are all great if you're interested in grad school. If you're not interested in grad school and you are but want to work for a while before you do that, I'm not going to run through all of these, but there's a lot of great companies that you can work for, companies and organizations you can work for that are there in Central New York. So the New York parks, there's gardens, there's nurseries, there's US Department of Agriculture, New York State Department of Agriculture and Markets, like, and like these, I think these are more on the level of consulting gigs, but yeah, there's a lot of work that's available in the botanical field in New York. And if none of those work, there's native plant societies, native plant nurseries, the Native Plant Trust, and the New York Flora Association that can send you in the right direction. Maybe you don't want to do botany for your job, but you like, the cool thing about botany is you can just like do it on the side and have fun and still sometimes make a big impact. So I put together, a couple of resources that might help you in getting your feet wet in learning plant identification. So the Newcomb's Wildflower Guide is one of the best wildflower guides that I'm aware of for the Northeast. It's basically a dichotomous key, and it'll allow you to, like, pretty much any plant you see, it'll allow you to identify it. And then, because there'll probably be some terms in there that you don't understand, there's the plant identification terminology, an illustrated glossary book that I have sitting right next to me right now. It is vital for newbies, for experienced people, because there's a lot of terms that are not always user friendly. There's also a couple of really cool websites that are geared towards people trying to do botany in the Northeast. So Go Botany is from the Native Plant Trust, and they have a really cool user-friendly website that can help you identify plants in the Northeast. There's also the New York Flora Atlas, which I haven't messed around with too much, but basically has checklists of all the plants in each county in New York. And it could definitely help you in figuring out plant species in the Northeast for sure. There's also iNaturalist, which I could do a whole talk on iNaturalist alone because it's a super cool app, but you can use it on your phone as an app, or it's a website too. And basically you can just take a photo of something and then put it on the app, and it will give you, it's a machine learning software, so it's building off of people putting more photos into the application, and then is learning from those photos of people identifying them, and then it can spit out the best answer of what it thinks whatever you took a photo of is. And like I said, I can go into this for a very long time, but it's very cool. And at the very least could help you get like a jump start on identifying a plant that you see in the wild. So that's it from me. Thank you so much for coming. I hope I didn't talk too fast or something. Please reach out to me with questions or comments. I love to talk to people. My email is here. My website is here if you have anything more, if you want to just check out more of my research. And then my Twitter, my Instagram, because I post a lot about my research on both. So I'd be happy to talk to you there too. And that's it. I think I went a full hour. Jessica, I'm done.
Well, thank you so much for your presentation. That was actually very informational. We do have some questions in the chat actually for you, if you would like to answer them really quickly.
Yeah.
Let me just scroll up and find it.
I don't even know how I went a full hour. I'm so sorry.
So the first question is, would you say your undergrad internships definitely shaped you into who you are today and helped you understand what you want for your future?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I mentioned about the internship with the United States Geological Survey and how I went out on the boat and I just immediately got seasick, you know. Yeah, and that sort of helped me realize like, okay, maybe I don't want to work on a boat. But it really, I mean, but then my internship with forces where I was doing like more fieldwork sort of stuff, I was like, I really like being outside. I like doing this. Yeah, so I think, yeah, great. They were very helpful in pushing me in the direction that I am and making me realize like, yes, I really enjoy being in this field.
Awesome. And then there's another one here too. Did your experience studying abroad help to prepare you when you made the decision to relocate to the West Coast? And any tips for students that might be looking to relocate after graduating?
I think so, for sure. Yeah, I mean, I had been to California. I came out to visit for just on a vacation in 2015. But I had done a little bit of traveling growing up, but I had never been somewhere by myself, and had never, gone that far out of the United States before. So it definitely like made me more confident in my abilities, and yeah, gave me kind of like a little bit of a travel bug. So yeah, it was a great experience and definitely prepared me as much as it could for moving across the country, because all my family is still in New York. So I definitely had a bit of homesickness for a while, but I've been out here for 3.5 years now, so I feel very happy now.
That's awesome. And then did you have any tips for students that might be looking?
I would say that, I mean, I don't know. I don't know what I do. I sort of jumped into it head first, and I spent a long time feeling like a little like, oh my God, I can't believe I did this. But it was, I just started like, I dived head first into work related things, and that sort of build my community. And now like, yeah, I just have a lot of friends out here that are through work, but also outside of work. So I guess, yeah, just put yourself out there is maybe my biggest thing. Just like start trying to interact with people and meet new people. And if you know where you're moving ahead of time, like start, trying to interact. If like what I did is I contacted professors at universities because I knew I was interested in grad school. So I just started talking to people before I even moved out here. None of those worked out, but it was still nice to have somebody to like go meet when I moved out here. Like, I have something planned. Yeah.
Yeah, it's still something.
Yeah.
What was the biggest benefit you saw from declaring a minor?
Oh, good question. For a long time, I really liked my sustainability studies minor more than I liked my major, because when I first transferred to Oswego, like I said, I didn't know what I wanted to do. So I actually, by the time I realized I wanted to do biology, it was like 2 weeks before the semester started. So I couldn't even declare my major anymore. I was stuck as a finance major, which I was like, I don't even like math. Why did I try to do this? So my first semester at Oswego, I took Calc 1, Chem 2, and Physics 1 all at the same time. And I was like miserable. That was like the worst semester of my life. I just spent a lot of time crying. But I loved my sustainability classes. They really like helped confirm that I was like going in the right direction. At least I was like, oh, I like what I'm learning. I can incorporate what I'm learning into my daily life. And I definitely think that's what's pushing me now, like in a conservation direction. Like I could just do straight botany research, but because I'm like heading more in that public policy direction because I have that sustainability background.
Nice.
Yeah.
And then any tips from for grads looking to go into botany or conservation in terms of getting a job in the field? For example, you mentioned your internship helping you get your job. Do you think your internship is key to getting your foot in the door?
Yes, absolutely. My first internship when I moved out here, that was plant related. gave me the experience I needed to get that my first like plant job. What was the full question again? I think I
Any tips for grads looking to go into botany or conservation in terms of getting a job in the field? For example, you mentioned your internship helping you to get your job. Do you think an internship is key to getting your foot in the door?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I guess, yeah, biggest tip is like, yeah, networking and reaching out to organizations. Like even I will say that the conservation field can be a little bit unfriendly to people who don't have the means to already take care of themselves, like underprivileged. Because like my friend Milan just did an unpaid 6-month job on the Farallon Islands. It's like not everybody, like that's great work and a really awesome experience, but not everybody can go 6 months without a paycheck. And that's sort of like a lot of the jobs that are present at like lower level conservation work. And that can be really frustrating, but that's sort of the way it is. So yeah, trying to do those unpaid volunteering positions or just like low paying positions that can just get you the experience to do the higher level stuff is sometimes, yeah, what you have to do. That's not great advice. I'm sorry to whoever asked the question. But it gets fun. Some of the most fun jobs are those lower jobs.
At least they're fun though.
Yeah, they're a lot of fun. Yeah.
So we actually have a question from Dr. Hellquist, and
hi, Dr. Hellquist.
asked you 2 questions, and he said, "Why no aquatic plants in your presentation?"
Oh no.
And why is, sorry if I pronounced this wrong, Dodecathion now a primula?
Oh, he's a jerk. I don't have a lot of aquatic photos. All the aquatics flower in the fall, and because of the fire cutting off my field season, I couldn't get a lot of those aquatics, but hopefully this year I can do that. And then Dodecatheon being changed to primula, I don't know. I'm not up on that taxonomy and why they did it. But I think primula is an easier name to remember. So this is plant talk. This is just us being. Thank you for the question, Dr. Hellquist.
He also wanted to let you know that your questions are never annoying.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
So that's all the questions we have, actually. Just want to say that was weird. Sorry. I just want to say a quick thank you so much to all of you for participating and to Nina for inspiring us.